Well, it's really good to have you all here, and if I haven't gotten to meet you yet, I'm Reverend Tim Lytle, Senior Minister here at Unity Church of Hawaii. And thank you. We just welcome all of you. And my topic today is, who is my neighbor? Now, some people, when they meet me, say, you know who you remind me of? They say, you remind me of Fred Rogers, of Mr. Rogers. And so when some of you are going, yeah, you're kind of like that. Only maybe more bouncy. But Fred Rogers was this individual that, taught so much about making people neighbors and who is my neighbor and will you be my neighbor? Well, there's a story in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, where there was this expert in Jewish law. And this expert in Jewish law approached Jesus and said, "Good master, what must I do to have eternal life?" And Jesus turned it back around on him. Jesus did that a lot. If you read the Gospels, he often turns questions back on people. And he said, "How do you read the law? What is it that you understand?" And the man said, "Well, it tells me that if I love God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love my neighbor as myself, that's the fulfillment of the law." So he's quoting from the Hebrew Scriptures in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verses 4 and 5. And then he's quoting from Leviticus 19:18. So he's quoting from these two commandments that Jesus considered to be the pinnacle, the foundation from which everything else flows. And Jesus said, "You're right, you got it, ding, 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 ding." But the man wanted to justify himself and said, "But who is my neighbor?" And so Jesus told this story that probably a number of you have heard, which is the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, remember, Jesus is telling this, Jesus is Jewish, and Jesus is telling this to a Jewish authority in Jewish law, and he speaks to Jewish people, okay? So he says, all right, so there was this man who was going from Jerusalem to Jericho, and on the way, he got beat up really badly. His clothes got taken off. His belongings got taken from him. He got robbed. He was just left to die. And who came along? Do you know who came along, those of you who know the story? A Jewish priest. First, it was a priest, and a priest came by, and what did the priest do? Did the priest stop and help the man? Did the priest get out his cell phone and call 911? What did the priest do? Now again, Jesus is Jewish. He's telling this to Jewish people. He's not putting down Jewish people. What he's pointing out is the hypocrisy of saying one thing and yet acting another thing. And so the Jewish priest goes to the other side. He goes to the sidewalk on the other side of the street, like, oh, I don't want to get mixed up in the middle of that. I am just going to go to the other side. And then comes a Levite. A Levite is a person who would work in the temple. They would be very involved in the temple worship. They would be very involved in, being, how can I say this, in our modern terms, like leaders in the church. And what did the Levite do? Do you know? He went to the other side of the street too. He didn't want to get involved. Maybe he had a church meeting to get to. Maybe it was a board meeting or finance team meeting. Oh, wait, I'm talking about myself. So he went to the other side of the street, right? And then came a Samaritan. Now, I don't know if you know about the Samaritans, But in that time, in that day, and there still are Samaritans. They're a very small minority. But Samaritans were looked down on. They were looked down on as being, and pardon this terminology, please, but they were looked at as being half-breeds. They were part Jewish and part something else, and they had some of the Jewish law, but they had their own things that they believed too. They were looked down on. And in that day and time, Jewish people were told, stay away from Samaritans. You become unclean by just being with them. I don't know about you, but my parents would always want to know what friends I was hanging out with. They wanted to know about my friends. They wanted to know if they were a bad influence or not. They screened who my friends were. So the Jewish people of that day were screening out the Samaritans. In this story, Jesus says the Samaritan came and saw this man, and he stopped and he poured in oil and wine into the wounds. In other words, natural treatment to assist the wounds, and wrapped up the wounds. And he put him on his own animal and took him to the inn, the hotel, okay, and gave the innkeeper money to take care of him, but he stayed there with him for a while. And he said, continue to take care of this man. If you have more expenses, I will pay you back when I come back through. And Jesus asked this leader in the law, which one of these people was a neighbor to the man? And how do you all answer? Which one was a neighbor to the man? The Samaritan was. So, Jesus intentionally picked someone who was an outcast. He didn't do this by accident. He picked someone who was from another culture, another ethnicity, different kind of beliefs. He intentionally picked someone who was different to emphasize the point of his story, that everyone is actually our neighbor. But it's up to us whether we see it or not. And being religious doesn't mean that we automatically know who our neighbor is. I want to talk about my neighbor. Now, he's probably not watching. I don't think he knows I'm a minister yet. We're getting to know each other. His name is Stephen. When our plans fell through for our condo in Hawaii Kai, we were on this 8-day search and rescue mission to find a place to live. We found this wonderful place in Kailua, but we looked at a lot of places and we needed to decide something fast. And so when we drove up to this place to look at it, this man came out, and he's kind of checking us over. And I was trying to listen to the GPS on my phone. He came to Olga Lucia's window. She rolled down the window. He was kind of checking us out. I think he wanted to find out if we needed help. And, he gave me a thumbs up and all that. I thought, I want to check with this individual again. And I noticed before we even got in, I think there was another car that drove by just to watch and to see who we were. I thought, oh, wow, they really watch in this neighborhood. They want to know what's happening. So our stuff got delivered, and I mean stuff, boxes. I think it was 6 crates full of boxes, of furniture, got unloaded into this pristine, brand new place with marble, ceramic tile. And suddenly there were these skyscrapers of boxes. And there were a few things down in the carport garage area. One day, without us knowing, someone came to our garage and moved our stuff in the garage and had a big truck and was unloading stuff. And then my landlord called me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This stuff was supposed to be delivered like in a couple of days or whatever. They are there now. They're down in your garage." I went down there, and my neighbor, Stephen, was out in the street coming over to my place. And he walked over to me and he said, "Who are these people? Do you need some help?" Now, do you recognize what Stephen was doing? He had just met me. And he was willing to stand with me and protect my stuff in the garage. He was willing to take on a truckload of people for a guy he had just met. There was something very touching about that to me. That Stephen did not see us as a stranger or as the other. Stephen saw us as family, as friend, as neighbor. Later, I went back over and I thanked him for standing up for us and being there for us, and we had a good talk. And I found out that his family, we live on a lane off of a major street. And so there's a number of houses on this lane. Except for our house, the entire lane is occupied by members of his family, all the different houses. He's kind of the gatekeeper of the lane. And do you realize nobody has ever messed with our stuff in the garage since? What does it mean to be a neighbor to someone who is different from you? Maybe they are lesbian or gay or transgender. Maybe they don't even identify as male or female. Maybe they are black. Maybe they are Hispanic, Latinx. Maybe they are Muslim. Maybe they are Wiccan. What is it like to see and recognize the presence of God in any person that you encounter, including yourself? And that's real important, that when you look in the mirror, that you see the face of God. When you look in the mirror, you see the presence of God looking back upon yourself. Have you gotten there yet? Yeah, I got one thumbs up. Another one. So see that presence of God in yourself, and when you can do that, you can see that presence of God in others. Now, what I'm about to tell you is not to hold myself up, but for years I've engaged in spiritual practices like chanting, types of chanting that cleanse the heart. I've engaged in prayer and meditation practices my whole life, and it actually works. It may take time, but it actually works. So don't give up. Keep doing your spiritual practices. Keep doing the quantum living practice. You'll hear more about that as we go. Keep doing your meditation, your prayer, your chanting, whatever it is that helps you to align in the divine presence. Keep doing it. It works. The way I know it works is I've seen the presence of God in others before. Those of you who are online, even though I don't see you here physically, I see you. I know you are the presence of God. Do you see that in yourselves? Do you know that you are the presence of God? Do you wake up, look at yourself in the mirror, and instead of saying, "Oh my God," do you say, "Oh my God"? Do you see the presence of God in yourself? Do you see that? And as we go through our day, we now live in Kailua. I love Kailua, beautiful little town. And I saw this woman, and she was bent over, and she was carrying a heavy load. And she's tiny. She looked like she was about 4'8" or 4'10", and stooped over and carrying this heavy load. And I thought, what is she doing? Where is she going? And as I watched her, I had this experience, and I'm having this experience more and more. Maybe you have this experience constantly. But when I saw her, I could not see any separation between me and her. Her pain, her load, her life was also my life. Whatever challenges that she has had in her life that has caused her back to be stooped over, whatever causes her to walk around with this heavy load, I could feel it. There was no separation between me and her. It was like I was living as her. I thought, wow, what is going on with me? And I've been having this experience more and more with people. I see someone who does not have a home, who is living on the street. They have a grocery cart filled with belongings that are very important to them. For some reason, I can't just walk by anymore and ignore it. I can't. When I see them, I see God. When I see them, I see myself. When I see them, I am reminded of what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25, when he said, when you've done it unto one of the least of these, you've done it unto me. And what did he say? When you've fed the hungry, when you've given water to the thirsty, when you've given clothing to the naked, when you've been hospitable to the stranger. And that Greek word stranger is xenos. Xenos. Does that sound familiar? Like xenophobia. A lot of our words come from Greek. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I thought it came from Latin. Well, the Roman people stole most of what they had from the Greeks. So, xeno means immigrant, people of a different ethnicity, different religion. It literally means immigrant, stranger. And of course, phobia, phobos, means fear of. Many of us have had a fear of the other. But how transforming it is when we see that there is no other. There's only God. There's only one power and one presence. This is true with animals. This is true with all life. We got to hang out with our friends Gerald and Catherine the other day, who communicate with animals. It's all one power. It's all one presence. And our mission statement is centered in God. We transform lives, right? We experience transformation of our lives. And then we go from there to make a positive difference in the world. When we see the presence of God in every situation, in every person, including ourselves, in every animal and every living thing, when we see that we are surrounded and immersed in the presence of God, our life is transformed. It's kind of like a fish. Imagine a fish swimming in the ocean, and someone comes up to the fish and talks about water, and the fish says, water? I don't believe in water. Show me water. What do you mean there's water? Well, water is what you swim in. Water is how you breathe, move, and have your existence. Water is everywhere that we are. It's the same way with the presence of God. Wherever you are, God is. As Eric Butterworth says, there's no spot where God is not. That you are the inlet and the outlet of all there is in God. God wants to give you the kingdom. Are you ready to receive it? God wants to give you the kingdom. Are you ready to receive it? Yes. Then see God in every place, every person, every living thing. We are immersed in God. You may wonder in your situation, whatever it is, it may be a financial challenge, it may be a health challenge, it may be a relationship challenge, it might be a mental health challenge, it may be a housing challenge. Whatever your challenge is, know that God is where you are. That wherever you are, God is, and God has all abundance, and you never have lack as long as we avail ourselves to that opulence, that abundance that God is. But we are here because we are here to be that presence of God in action. We are here to be that presence wherever we see our neighbor, someone in need. So here's my assignment for you. You ready for an assignment? Yes. Great. I love that enthusiasm. In our integral ministry program, we have this same assignment, and I'm going to give this to you. For the next 2 weeks, I want you every day to identify one or both of two things. I want you to identify where you see transformation of lives occurring. It could be in your own life, it could be in others' lives, to witness and see where transformation is occurring. And I want you to take notice of where you see people making a positive difference in the world. It could be yourself, it could be others, but every day, and if you have a journal, you can write down what it is that you saw someone doing that made a positive difference in the world. You know, it's like when I went to the store, someone held the door open for me. I thought, that was so nice. They didn't have to do that. They're making a positive difference in the world. As I was walking out here in nature, I saw someone pick up a piece of trash. They're making a positive difference in the world. As I see the ushers here, greeting people and welcoming people here, I see people making a positive difference in the world. As I see whatever it is, we are here to transform lives and make a positive difference in the world. And one of the biggest ways we can do that is to see God in every person, every living thing, every aspect of our lives. There is no spot where God is not. So I invite you to take a deep breath right where we are. And we know that where we are, God is. That we are never separate from this presence that God is. Just like a fish in the ocean, we are immersed in this presence. We are never cut off from this presence. And so, Spirit, we open our hearts. We open ourselves to experience the presence, to be the presence in action, to be that presence of good in the world, to assist in transformation, to take ownership of how we show up in the world, to be a blessing. We breathe into this as we think about who is my neighbor. Who is that person that Spirit is bringing to my heart, to my mind. Who is that person that is my neighbor? Who is that person, that living thing, that situation where I need to see the presence of God? We open ourselves to this presence. Right now, we breathe into it. We allow this presence as we go into a minute of silent meditation. Centering in that presence, we know that we will carry from here that presence. And as we go more deeply, we have this prayer that Jesus taught us to pray that teaches us that we are here to do God's will on earth as it is in heaven.